This conference will now be recorded.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this morning. It's Wednesday, December 21st. I'm Brian Harper, the board chair, and this meeting is now called to order. I'd like to begin by asking Carla, please, the Department of Ag coordinator, if you could review housekeeping items for this meeting.
Sure. Good morning. Just for the record, it's December 1st, 2021, not 21st. We'd like to ask that only board members have their camera on this morning, and to please mute your phone if you are not speaking at the time. That will help with any feedback noise that we have. And if you're joining by conference call only, all the materials are available on our Board of Ag webpage for you to follow along. The other thing I'll mention is that in 2022, we will be switching meeting platforms to Microsoft Teams. So just as a future note, we'll be switching over to Teams. I think that's all we have this morning, Brian.
Okay, sounds pretty good. I guess I'll also ask you, Carla, if you could please call the roll for introductions, and I'll start with myself. My name's Brian Harper, current board chair, and I'm a farmer in Junction City, Oregon.
Chad Allen.
Yep, Chad Allen here. Dairyman here in Tillamook.
Barbara Boyer.
Good morning, everybody. Barbara Boyer, farmer out of McMinnville, Oregon, and I sit here, or I'm with you today as the chair of the Soil Water Conservation Commission.
Shantae Johnson.
Good morning, everybody. Shantae Johnson, farmer out of Corbett, Oregon, board member.
Elin Miller.
Elin Miller, hazelnut grower and wine grape grower in Umpqua, but currently at our cabin in Arizona.
Luisa Santa Maria.
Good morning, Luisa Santa Maria, public member at Oregon State University.
Randy Svati has an excused absence today. And we have Josh Zielinski. Oh, we can't hear you, Josh. He'll jump on by phone, I think, is what his hand signals are there. Dean Sams is not in attendance this morning, and Director Taylor.
Good morning, Alexis Taylor, Director ODA.
I think that's everyone. We have about 27 people total on the call this morning, so we have about 20 guests. We can go through those folks quickly. Jim Johnson. Do you want to jump on and say good morning?
I'm getting there. Hello, it's Jim Johnson. I'm the land use specialist for the department.
Tammy Denny. Nicole Mann. Oops.
Here I am. So sorry, Carla. Tammy
That's okay.
Denny, Executive Director, Oregon Cattlemen's Association.
Nicole Mann.
Good morning, Nicole Mann, here on behalf of a variety of agricultural clients, wheat growers and Columbia Gorge fruit growers.
Jess Paulson.
Good morning, Jess Paulson, the Program Area Director for the Market Access and Certification Programs.
Isaac Stapleton.
Good morning, Isaac Stapleton, Program Director for the Natural Resource Program Area.
Tracy Lowe.
Good morning, Tracy Lowe, reporter with the Statesman Journal in Salem.
Dave Losh.
Good morning, this is Dave Losh. I'm the state statistician for USDA National Ag Stat Service for Oregon.
Katie Murray.
Hi there, Katie Murray, Executive Director of Oregonians for Food and Shelter. Thank you.
Chris Benneman.
Good morning, everyone. Interim Director for Plant Protection Conservation Program areas.
Rusty Rock.
Good morning. I'm Interim Director for the Food Safety, Animal Health, and Lab Services Program at the Department of Agriculture.
Sunny Summers.
Good morning. Cannabis and Special Projects Assistant in the Director's Office.
Tiffany Bennett. Nellie McAdams.
Good morning, Nellie McAdams with the Oregon Agricultural Trust.
Lauren Henderson.
Good morning, Lauren Henderson, the Deputy Director with the Department of Ag.
Andrea Cantu Shomas.
Good morning, Andrea Cantu Shomas, Communications Director for the Oregon Department of Agriculture.
And then we have 4 callers on the line. If you could unmute yourself and introduce yourself, please.
Hello,
good morning, sir.
Tammy Kerr, Oregon Dairy Farmers Association. Good morning.
Good morning. This is Eric Orem. I'm a wheat and cattle producer out of Heppner, Oregon.
Latusz Perkowski with Capital Press.
Morning, Carla. Les Ruark. I'm from out in Gillum County, just as an interested person.
Thank you. Josh, did you get connected?
Yeah, I think I'm one of the phone callers. Yeah, number 4.
Yes. All right. That's everyone. Thank you.
All right, excellent. So I guess quick comment in the opening stuff here. We didn't get any, didn't receive any, or there's nothing submitted for written or verbal comments. But if anyone would like to sign up for public comment, they may do that in the chat box, and the comments will be limited to 3 minutes only. So I guess next we'll get an approval of the minutes. I guess I don't know if anybody got a good chance to look at those. If everybody is in favor.
I move approval. This is Elin.
Excellent. Is there a second?
Barbara Boyer seconds.
Great. I guess I got a motion and a second. All those in favor, the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, say aye.
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 All right, excellent. Okay, well, I guess we're going to move on to the director's report. Alexis Taylor.
Hey, good morning, everyone. It's good to see you. Elin, you're calling in from Arizona. I'm calling in from Spokane, Washington this morning because I am at the Tri-State Grain Growers meeting. The Oregon Wheat Growers League have their annual meeting tied to this, so I'm meeting with them today. So zooming in or go-to meeting in from my hotel room. So that is one of the great things about being able to do virtual meetings is multitasking, I suppose. So a couple things I wanted to flag for you all today. As you heard through the introductions, maybe some new staff names or some old existing staff that you all know well in new roles. We've had some staff changes at ODA. As a couple months ago, you all saw Lisa Hansen, which was ODA's longtime deputy, moved on to be executive director of the Oregon Watershed Enhancement Board, or OWEB. That's always the struggle with having really top tier amazing folks on your team, is that they are so good they get new opportunities to move on. So super excited for Lisa. We work still really closely together with her over there, but because of her moving on into that new role, it opened up some new opportunities here at ODA as well. I asked Lauren to step in to that deputy director role, which he agreed to, so I was thrilled for that. You may have also seen recently, Stephanie Page has gone over to be Lisa's deputy at OWEB, which is a great opportunity for her. Because of that, again, opens up some new opportunities. I have asked Isaac Stapleton to move into the natural resources program area. Actually, Isaac's initial background, most of you probably recall he's been over in food safety and animal health for the past few years, but he originally came actually from the NERPA program area into that animal health role and our food safety and animal health role, and now is back to NERPA. So really thrilled for that. We are currently in the process of recruiting in the plant protection and conservation program area. You may recall Dr. Helmuth Rogg retired after over a long time in that position. I'm not even sure exactly how long. In August, Chris Beneman is acting interim there for us while we get through that hiring process. And then we are in the very end stages of opening up that food safety and animal health program area position that Isaac has vacated. So some new changes coming. I think, this is something state government and certainly ODA is going to be grappling with for several years to come. We have a pretty significant number of our employees who can retire at any time. I think last count, it was just under 60. And so I think all of state government's kind of going to be in this transition period as we have pretty significant numbers across the state enterprise able to kind of retire and really looking for that new generation of leaders. So, change always opens up, I think, opportunity for others, both internally to our agency for promotional opportunities, but also externally to bring in some different perspectives. So I always look at it as a positive. So you will continue to see, I think, some new faces in the coming months. The other thing I wanted to mention to the board is that the state is still on track for that January 1st targeted reopening to the public. State's always been open for business, but our ODA buildings have only been open by appointment only to the general public, with the majority of our staff who can work remotely having been working remotely through the COVID pandemic. We are working through kind of those final details. A lot of our staff, I think, will be in a hybrid format where they are in some, that they continue to work remotely some. I certainly will be doing some of that myself, where I will continue to work remotely some, in the office some. And so we're driving towards that as an agency. Because of that, our plan is to begin meeting in person next year. I think we could all applaud that. I think we are missing getting together as a board. Particularly, I know there are several members on the board that have never had the opportunity to meet each other. So yet in person. So I think that will be great and exciting. So our plan, which I know we'll talk a little bit about locations at the end of the board meeting, but for those to be in person with still a hybrid option, that's what we're working toward, planning towards, understanding, not everybody can travel for every single meeting. So still having, I think, that flexibility that we'll be able to have board members or the public Zoom into our meetings will be great. One other thing I wanted to just kind of more on the housekeeping side mention is we're hoping to have our 2 new board members appointed by this meeting. I think we got stuck in a couple transitions. One, the state is transitioning executive appointments to a new, different online platform. And then we had some transition in governor's office staff. And so as I understand it, the governor's office is finalizing those as we speak. I think we will absolutely have our new board members appointed by our next board meeting that we get together. It was just, I think, caught up in some of that transition, not able to have them those appointments finalized by the governor or decided by the governor for this meeting. And then I also wanted to highlight one item that we've been working on with the governor's office. So you may have seen yesterday, the governor called the legislature for a special session on December 13th. This is really to focus on the state's rent assistance program, which has run out of funds. as I understand it, they're going to be focusing on extending eviction protections for those who have applied and are waiting for assistance. And the plan is to appropriate $195 million in rental assistance programs because they ran out of money. At that time, it is expected that the emergency board is going to also convene and take up some other sensitive budget items, which we're hearing is going to include the disaster relief package that the governor has been working on and discussing with legislative leadership. It's not exactly sure or clear what is 100% going to be included into that disaster assistance and drought relief package. But I think we're still kind of waiting on those details. So more to come there, but I think positive movement, I think for many of our agricultural community who has been hit hard, particularly this past year with a compounding multitude of natural disasters, the heat dome, historic drought, wildfire, smoke impact, ice storm. Unfortunately, that list is not exhaustive to the impacts that our ag sector has been impacted by some extreme weather events. So I think that's positive. We will keep the board updated as more of those final details come out, but that looks like it will be moving. At the same time, on the disaster assistance front, USDA, in the continuing resolution that Congress passed in September, USDA received $10 billion to provide some additional disaster assistance. And so we have been working with them to flag some of the Oregon-specific gaps that we have seen in existing federal assistance programs. You all may recall we brought Secretary Tom Vilsack from USDA out in August to start that conversation. We have followed up with some additional conversations and letters to USDA to try and highlight the gaps that we have seen in Oregon and how those resources could go to address some of those. In the authorizing legislation, or in the continuing resolution, they addressed some of those concerns. They made heat impact a qualifying loss, and so some of those losses that we have seen because of that pretty extreme heat event should be covered. So that's all positive. So more to come, I think, all on that. Those were kind of the 4 items I wanted to tick through this morning. Certainly happy if there are questions from the board to take them. Otherwise, I will turn it back to you, Chair Harper.
All right, any questions for Director Taylor? All right, seeing none. Before we move on to our second agenda item.
This is Elin.
Oh, sure. Okay, Elin, go
Sorry,
for it.
Brian. I was too slow. Director Taylor, for the qualifying loss of heat, qualifying loss as in crop insurance, or is there any special program or WIP plus, or what do you mean by the qualifying loss, just for clarification?
Yeah, so it would be for, it's not for crop insurance, it would be for that $10 billion that USDA got received in that continuing resolution. So USDA is going to have to create the program. It's probably going to be very similar to WIP Plus that's out there, which did not have, or which has been out there in the past years. But WIP heat event was not a qualifying loss under the previous WIP Plus, and the continuing resolution, which provided that $10 billion to USDA, expanded that to include heat. That was one of the things we had been talking to our federal delegation about, and I know they had then in turn been pressing for that change in this appropriation. So I think that's positive. So we don't know exactly what the details of that program will look like, but those heat losses that many of our growers had experienced because of that June heat dome, they should be covered. So that's a positive. Does that help clarify, Elin?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, any other questions for Director Taylor? All right, before we move on to Deputy Director Henderson, we're actually going to let Jim give us an update on the Portland Water Bureau project, since he's got a schedule conflict for during board business. So Jim, you got the floor.
Thanks, Brian. Just wanted to quickly update you all. I went on site with the Portland Water Bureau staff and took a look at the area where they're proposing to do the development. Interesting situation that I think we'll discuss with the commission at a later date, or with the committee at a later date. I wanted to update you just really quickly that I've been out there to take a look at that, because we really don't have an application to respond to yet. Staff indicated to me that they are gearing up development of their application and hope to submit it to Multnomah County in the spring. So I think there's no reason for the board's committee to meet yet. Once I have something for you to take a look at, so to speak, we can call that committee together. I will say that it's going to be an interesting situation for us to review. It is definitely a high density nursery area. I saw a lot of different nursery crops out there, a lot of infrastructure, agricultural infrastructure to deal with out there in terms of things associated with nursery and the like. And it's definitely high quality agricultural land. On the other side of the coin, it's actually not zoned exclusive farm use. So that's going to throw a little wrench, so to speak, in terms of how we review this. So bottom line, I've met with the staff out there to take a look at it. They gave me an awful lot of good information. I discussed with them some of what I thought would be the concerns that they would have to deal with pursuant to Multnomah County zoning code. And we'll leave it at that until we get something more to actually develop. I'd also like to congratulate Barbara Boyer for her appointment to LCDC. That's going to have a great impact for us in the land use world in terms of having another farmer. We haven't had a farmer for a while on LCDC, and that's going to be great to have that voice. So that's all I got for everyone, Brian, in case unless somebody has some questions.
All right, any questions for Jim? All right, doesn't look like it.
Great. Thanks for accommodating my schedule.
Absolutely, anytime. All right, well, we're going to move on to Deputy Director Henderson.
Good morning, everyone. I'm still not used to that title, deputy. I'm kind of doing both assistant and deputy right now, and Alexis is letting me do both, which is great. Just to echo before I start our budget update, our budget probably this time is the best that we've had, considering where we were at not too long ago talking to you about some pretty severe budget cuts. That was thanks to a lot of things, but I'm pretty happy with it. Now, that does come with some pluses and minuses. The pluses are that we had to leave a lot of positions vacant, as Director Taylor alluded to, and now we're in the middle of ramping up and trying to get those positions filled. Our agency really is at capacity for what we're really able to do. Our staff are tired. They've done amazing work through this COVID out, working where they can. Food safety obviously being one of those places, but other places in our agency too, our shipping point program. We didn't really miss a beat through that whole process as best as we could. It's good and will be good after January to try to get together again with you and others in person, but we're not quite there today. And so you're going to hear a lot of new faces at ODA. I walked into our natural resources the other day and I think there were 6, 7 new staff, and that's great. Actually, it's wonderful to have new staff, new ideas, and an energy in our building that we haven't had because we've had staff doing multiple jobs, and that will continue. But certainly those changes, we'll try to introduce staff and get them out as they go. I wanted to talk just a little bit about how my budgeting and legislative concept ideas may translate to you or our new staff. Lisa challenged me when she left to really get out of my head all the stuff I know and really work hard on mentoring our managers and our program directors. So you may see me, if you're with me, take a step back and not assume anything and talk a little bit more about why the answer may be one way. And so I'm offering that to you. If you guys go, how does this really work, Lauren? I'm open to have those conversations. And then the second thing I wanted to talk about is I'm not going anywhere. That's my number one question is, Lauren, are you leaving? No, I'm not. I'm here and love every minute of it. Yes, I miss Lisa, but we talk almost every week, which is wonderful. So with that, our budget is about $143 million. That's a lot for our agency. It grew about $15 million, and I'll talk about why. Interestingly enough, half of that is our other funds that grew. And I'll just remind you all, other funds don't come with money. They rely on fees, business licenses, and those things. So even though our budget grew by $7 million, that doesn't guarantee that we actually have the money to go along with that. Our budget did include 3 fee increases, food safety on our feeds program and our brands program. Feeds is already in place, and we're still working through the food safety and the brands parts of that. But that's good. That keeps those programs whole and maintain that. Our budget included general fund investment in our food safety. We talked to you all about that and the shifts that had happened. So that was very good news. Along with the staff, we really didn't have that many staff reductions. We were looking at quite a few. Those were primarily because of the lottery fund revenue down because of the closures of the restaurants and that. Our lottery funds is back up to where it needs to be. That is dependent on, the lottery continuing to churn out that revenue that we all depend on. But right now that looks pretty good. The revenue forecast was way up this last time. And so we should be business as usual in our lottery funded programs. And so I will just mention the budget allows us to make investments in our hemp program by adding 4 more staff. If you remember, we were using our weed staff who stepped up to the plate because the lottery funds were down so far that we weren't able to do all things in our lottery funded programs. And so we moved our weed staff to the hemp program, and they're transitioning now through the first of the year back to full-time weed work. And at the same time, we're trying to bring on the new staff that the legislature gave us. We have 2 more to go, and those recruitments I think are going out this week or next, so we can get full there. I did just want to mention a couple of bigger investments. Our budget included about $2.3 million in funding for the egg water quality program, plant conservation programs, and our weed program together. That's parts of that. We received $450,000 of one-time funding for the noxious weed control program, and we are working on what that looks like. It'll be primarily on the ground projects that may not qualify for the normal grant program through the money that we get from OWEB. And so you should see that out fairly soon. We're putting the finishing touches on that, and that was good. But it's a reminder, it is one time. Our native plant conservation program, it's the little program that has been operating on a shoestring for years. But got a huge investment in their program of $468,000 to full-time positions. So that really puts that program on a better footing, so to speak. We haven't really had that over the years. It's always been dependent on federal funds, which meant we couldn't work on the state listed species as much as we should do because we didn't have the general fund. So that program's in a great spot today. And then it included some work in the water quality area around Natural Resource Specialist 3, working in the small watersheds and land condition assessments for compliance with egg water quality rules. And then there's about $650,000 in that package for contracting with some local partners for some assistance there. We also got, what I'm really excited about is $2 million for the one-time general fund to establish the grant program for state meat inspection. That's been an ongoing project for a while. It needed that money to help the infrastructure. That grant program should be out soon. We're finalizing the rules on that. We've talked to you more about that project, and that'll be for another day to really get where we're at with that. And I can see us coming to a future board meeting to really tell you how we've done with that. But that's an exciting step to get that, not only the regulatory part started, but then hopefully some new facilities. It's all about increasing capacity in our state for processing. And so I was asked, is it enough money? Probably not, but it's a start, which is what we've never had before. And so that's exciting there. On the legislative front, we're kind of in a lull spot right now, which doesn't happen very often. It's not going to last very long, basically the month of December. We're working hard to gear up and use the resources that were given to us this last session. I talked to you about the hiring that we're doing and all of the projects and the grant programs that we're trying to get off the ground. But it's also time to start thinking about the next budget and what kind of investments we might need in our agency and what kind of legislative concepts that we might want to introduce. We're starting to think about that. We don't have anything penciled out today other than to pay attention to the timelines and kind of when we needed to be adhering to those. Typically, legislative concepts are due around April. I would anticipate we would be coming back to the board in January and be able to define better for you those timelines and the input places for those things at that point in time. I just wanted to mention it to you. Just if you thought we could take a break from our budget because we just got one, we really can't, because it really is time to start thinking about those legislative concepts. We have a short session coming in February, February 1. Agencies do not get bills in the short session. Legislators are limited to how many they can introduce, and that deadline is past November 19th. Our role really in the short session is to be there for those committees that might need information about our programs and to provide that information, to provide updates when we're asked, and those things. And of course, the normal bill process when a bill is introduced and it might have a fiscal impact or affect our agency, we're often called on to do testimony about what that may or may not do in particular programs. I would anticipate you will see discussion, Elin, around hemp and cannabis, certainly. I don't really know what that looks like, but you've been part of those discussions and we really appreciate your participation in that. That is very helpful. But I'm pretty sure there will be cannabis discussions. The task force for that was passed in House Bill 3000 is getting up and started soon, and so there will be some reports out of that, and we've been a part of that process. That's really, I think, where we're at today in a nutshell, and I went through that very, very fast. If any of you, we have a one-pager that's actually a three-pager on kind of what our packages were and our totals in areas. If any of you need that as a board, I can ask Carla to send that around. We've used that when we've talked about our budget in other forums. It is very helpful. So if any of you want that, we can send that around. Thank you, Chair Harper.
Welcome, Deputy Director Henderson. Are there any questions for Lauren on that update? All right.
So
Alexis, do you want to go first?
You're up, Barbara.
Oh, okay, thanks. So Lauren, that one-time $450,000 for noxious weeds. So you're saying that it's going to be a grant program that funds something that not normally would be funded under the other. Can you, what comes to mind for you? Something like where is there a gap in the other program?
I think, I don't have my list with me, and I'm sorry you caught me. I can give you some of the potential projects, and Alexis, you might be able to help me if you can remember. But particularly around, we put a focus on maybe things that could help with restoration, possibly work around any of the wildfire impact areas that might normally not be well funded through the other grant program through the counties. So it may be a special project in a place like that. It could be, Alexis, do you remember?
Well, I think part of it also was maybe some of the pre-work that needs to be done to get grants ready for the grants that go through the OWEB process, to like kind of complement some of that work. There's always some pre-work that sometimes county don't have the capacity to take on. So maybe a focus there as well was one of the conversations that we kind of talked about with staff. So we're kind of finalizing what that might look like. It's not, our intent is not to be duplicative, but to where there are, to be more targeted and narrow where there maybe are some needs to complement the larger weed grants that flow through OWEB.
Yeah. Thank you, Alexis. I was having a hard time going back to that list. It's not competing. It's not because the grant process through OWEB is somehow complicated. That's not what it is, and I can see why you were asked, since you kind of sit in both places. But it really was to try to find those niche places that maybe could be propped up and had a different focus maybe than some of the others.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And then, Chair Harper, the only thing I wanted to underscore that Lauren mentioned was we do plan, when we get together for the next board meeting, when we bring everyone together, is we will have some, at that point, rough ideas around some of what we believe our initial lens of budget asks may be, and legislative concepts. So we will bring those to the board to get feedback. They will not be finalized. They will not be fleshed out. We will absolutely still be in the middle of stakeholder engagement, but just to bring those for some initial feedback, that is going to be our plan at the next board meeting.
And if I could, Chair Harper, I missed my last talking point that I wanted to ask. So if I could do that real quick. With what Alexis and I have talked to about recruiting new staff, I'm going to extend an offer to all of you and a challenge. Our best recruiters are you and our staff, frankly. I'm being more vocal, asking. I have a special interest in bringing along recent college graduates who may not have that 30 years of experience. The state system tends to look that way, but they are bright minds with lots of new ideas and trying to figure out a way to bring, recent college grads into the state service. I've personally helped start 5, and they are wonderful additions. And it really doesn't matter if they stay at our agency. I'll just tell you that. I'd love them to. But they add a lot. And so if you know somebody young in their career, old in their career, want to change, and you think they would be a good fit at our department, send them our way. We may or may not have a job, but with the job force, like it is with private sector, trying to find people to work, we're gonna start using the word of mouth recruitment system, because frankly, some of the recruitments we do, not everybody's at that workday level. And I even talked to someone that said, I never even thought about your department, but I do have some skills that might fit and hadn't even thought about it. So I'm just going to give that to you all. If you know somebody, don't be shy to say, hey, I think you might be a good fit for ag, or have you thought about that? And we'll take a name at least at the minimum. And if we have open jobs, steer them there. So I wanted to leave you all with that.
All right, excellent, Lauren, thank you. And is there any more for our Deputy Director? All right, well, we will move on to our update on the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. We're going to start with Nellie McAdams, and then we'll follow up with Chad Allen, and then Shantae Johnson. So Nellie,
Thank you.
You're up.
Thank you, Chair Harper and Director Taylor. Carla, would you mind giving me permission to share my screen?
Sure, give me a moment.
No problem. And I'll just begin. So as Chair Harper said, we will be giving you an update on the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program, a statewide grant program administered by OWEB. GoToMeeting needs to use accessibility features. Interesting. Can you try that again, Carla? I'm just trying to. I might not be able to share my PowerPoint here because I'm not.
I have your PowerPoint that I was gonna share.
Oh, you were? Okay, great. It might be able to work now. Yeah, I think I'll have to ask you to share that, Carla, if that's okay. So we'll be giving you an update on the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. Chad Allen is not only a board member here, but also on the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Commission. And Shantae Johnson will give us an update about the Black Oregon Land Trust. So to start, I just want to provide an important clarification that I represent the Oregon Agricultural Trust, which, while its name is similar to, is not the same thing as the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program. Oregon Agricultural Trust is a 501c3 nonprofit. We are one of the groups advocating for the state program, the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program, which is administered by OWEB. And OAHP, or the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, is a grant program that would support dozens of nonprofits and governmental entities throughout the state. We are just a simple advocate. We are not asking for funding for ourselves, but rather for the state program that can be distributed. So I just want to provide that clarification from the outset because our names are rather similar. So just to give you an overview, OAT, or the Oregon Ag Trust, is a nonprofit land trust that partners with farmers and ranchers to protect agricultural lands for the benefit of Oregon's economy, communities, and landscapes. Next slide, please. So what that means for us is protecting agricultural land to keep it in production. And that includes using tools like a working lands easement, which removes development rights. I'll explain that in a little bit too. Or in certain situations, holding ownership of property, usually on a short term, to transfer to a farmer or rancher once it's been protected. We also provide technical assistance to other land trusts or organizations who want to do similar work or support farmers and ranchers. We educate farmers, ranchers, and their attorneys and accountants and appraisers about these complex transactions, easements, and farm and ranch succession. And then we advocate for programs, especially those that provide funding. So that includes the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, and is why I'm here today to speak about that program, which we are advocating for. Next, please. Our organization has 4 main geographic priority areas: the North Coast, the Gorge or Mid-Columbia, the Mid and South Willamette, and Southeast Oregon. And these areas have diverse pressures on agricultural land, taking it out of production in numerous different ways. I think development, fragmentation, and removal of land from ag production looks different in each region. And we are completing our conservation plan right now to help us understand what the greatest threats in each of these regions are. And working on about 14 projects that would protect 22,000 acres at this time. Next, please. So I'm transitioning into the state program, the Oregon Agricultural Heritage Program, which we advocate for. So like I said, this program is administered by OWEB. Its purposes are to keep farms and ranches in production, but also to support the associated fish and wildlife habitat. And the commission has made it clear that they want this to be additive, not one at a detriment to the other. And it also helps to leverage federal dollars, which have been sitting on the table for Oregon for the past 4 decades. Next slide, please. This program was originally developed the governor's office, and the 6 groups on the right were the ones who were originally at the table from about 2015 until it passed in 2017. Since then, rules and a commission have been established, but the program has yet to be funded. The grants in that program have yet to be funded. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the grants, and this is a summary of what those grants are for. There's essentially 4 different grant programs. So there's grants for voluntary conservation for landowners. One is permanent working lands easements, which I'll define in a second. Another is temporary covenants, so protecting land from development for just 20 to 50 years. And then grants for not only writing, but implementing conservation management plans as well. There's also a grant program to provide succession planning workshops, and this was really designed to tie into the Ties to the Land program that OSU offers as well, to ensure that people have the information that they need for succession planning, not providing them with attorneys to do that work, but providing education. And then capacity building for the grantee organizations. So any organization that applies for the above can apply for support so that they can have a stronger organizational infrastructure. Again, the program's administered by OWEB and overseen by the Oregon Ag Heritage Commission. Next slide, please. So, I've spoken about our organization, OAT, and the Oregon Ag Heritage Program, but, why do we need these 2 programs? And you know this well, so I'm going to speed through these slides. But about a quarter of Oregon's land, about 16 million acres, is in agricultural production. Next slide, please. And we expect about 2/3 of that land to change hands in just 20 years. And we're actually in the middle of that transfer right now. It is happening as we speak, in large part because average age of farmer and rancher is near retirement at 60. Next slide, please. And complicating that is the fact that most farmers and ranchers do not have a thorough succession plan. They are sole proprietorships, which suggests to our researchers at OSU that they've probably not had the in-depth discussions that they need to have with an attorney. Next slide. So as that land is changing hands, and as the next generation on that land is uncertain, since many of those farmers not only don't have a succession plan, but don't have a successor, often that land is parcelized or converted to non-farm uses. In other words, developed within the land use program's parameters, and in some way taken out of production or made more unaffordable to the next generation. Next slide, please. So Oregon does have an exceptionally strong land use program that has provided a baseline of protection. However, that land use program has just slowed the pace of development, not prevented development, especially of some of our most productive acreage. So 500,000 acres have been removed from ag use, and over 65,000 acres from exclusive farm use since the land use program was created almost 50 years ago. Plus, we have kind of a death by 1,000 cuts from over 60 non-farm uses that are allowed on exclusive farm use. So the tools that I'll be talking about, the working lands easements, are one way to reverse this trend and to provide some permanent protection. Next slide, please. So a conservation easement is a voluntary contract or legal agreement that's between the landowner and a land trust like OAT, or a government agency like some soil and water conservation districts. Easements permanently limit the use on the land. Covenants in Oregon are for a shorter period of time, 20 to 50 years. And it protects conservation values, which in the case of a working lands easement includes keeping the land available for production, keeping it in production, and retaining the water rights for those uses. Throughout this process, the landowner retains ownership of that land, so they can sell it, they can devise it to their heirs. All that's removed is the development rights that they wouldn't use anyways and that interfere with agricultural use. Next step, slide, please. So the Oregon Ag Heritage Program wouldn't stand on its own in purchasing easements. So, landowners sell or donate part of their development rights. They're compensated in some way, either a tax break or through cash. And the Oregon Ag Heritage Program provides a piece of the cash that is the incentive and the reward for the public benefit that these landowners are providing in donating or selling their development rights. Right now, there's a federal match program that provides 50 to 75% of the funding. And states with match programs that are funded can bring in almost 4 times as much money from that federal grant program as states like Oregon with unfunded match programs. So, for example, Oregon has only received 0.4% of the federal funding that's been made available for about 4 decades. So that match would provide significant leverage for federal dollars and as well as some landowner donation. Next slide, please. There is significant demand in the state. So in 2019, we found that there were 28 projects that were pretty much shovel ready that would have protected 76,000 acres. On an annual basis, the current Farm Bill allocates $450 million to the nation for agricultural easements, including wetlands easements, but some of it's for these ag easements too. And the reconciliation package includes $1.7 billion for agricultural easements. So if it's passed in the Senate, that could provide significantly more funding that could come to states like Oregon. And then in 2023, we're advocating for more baseline funding for agricultural easements. So, right now, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, which administers the federal program, has not been able to allocate much funding to Oregon. It's just been around $500,000, which is not nearly enough to meet the demand. They need to see commitment from the state on a federal level in order to allocate more money to Oregon at a federal level. Next slide, please. I mentioned conservation easement, conservation management plans. Just briefly, landowners under these plans could be compensated if they have a 20 to 50-year plan. So compensated on 5-year increments. And this program could be super helpful, especially for those who have entered into candidate conservation agreements with assurances, say who have sage grouse habitat, because instead of just doing conservation to avoid the stick of regulation, they could be rewarded for the conservation that they've been doing all along by receiving payments as well. So these can be done on a regional scale and compensate landowners for their stewardship. Next, please. I mentioned the conservation benefits, and I just want to clarify, agricultural land on its own provides many conservation benefits. There's often riparian areas or forest habitat associated, but also, just the land itself, especially in rangeland, provides migratory corridors. And it's essential for water retention or water quality efforts. And of course, the soil can provide many carbon sequestration opportunities as well. Next, please. So the Oregon Ag Heritage Commission, you'll be hearing from Chad a little bit more about this, that it is a diverse group that includes stakeholders from agriculture, OSU, natural resources, and tribes. And it oversees the program and reports and advises OWEB. Next, please. So in 2022, our ask for the Oregon Ag Heritage Program is $5 million. That would mainly go towards OWEB program administration, so about 10% of that going to admin, and then the remainder to pay landowners and organizations that work with them for the working land easements and covenants, as well as for conservation management plan. I think OWEB is thinking of just starting with these 2 grant programs to start, just because the templates and applications and hiring needs to be done. It seems like these are the highest priority at this time. Next slide, please. And I just want to share a quote from one of the Oregon Ag Heritage Commissioners. So, we're asking $5 million now, but Woody Wolf asks what the cost would be if those lands become concrete or developed. So just want to leave you with that. And I think we can take maybe questions at the end. I want to make sure that Chad and Shante have plenty of time to speak. So with that, I'll hand it over to Chad. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Okay. Yeah, so I got the wonderful opportunity to be on the ground on developing the Oregon Ag Heritage rules and process. It's been about 6 to 8 months, one winter, traveling back and forth from Prineville, and a couple times it was twice a month. And you know, the wide, diverse group of people. Everybody was pretty excited. Oregon, I think, had decided with all the parties that were interested to sort of take a different approach, kind of an Oregon way of doing this. And because currently Oregon only had the opportunity for conservation easements that were strictly for water and wildlife type of priorities. And so this was an opportunity to sort of marry the two concepts together and come up with something that was really going to be neat for Oregon. And we had some good debate and discussions among different things. We tried to finalize what was most important for everybody and part of this process. And we came together with some pretty neat stuff. Maida kind of being the lead of that, directing that process through OWEB. Really, really dynamic too. And so, and so now we spent the last couple of years trying to figure out, we've done all this work, and now we need to get some dollars to get the wheels moving here and see what's worked, what hasn't worked, and provide some opportunity in that program. But it's something that's really, really important to me. Any opportunity that we can do to preserve farm ground and maintain it in production is a big deal for Oregon. So I think that's about what I got to share.
Thank you, Chad and Shante.
Good morning, everybody. I'll wait for Carla to upload our presentation. Okay. So I will be representing the Black Oregon Land Trust this morning and just wanted to keep you all informed and updated on our work. Next slide, please. So at the Black Oregon Land Trust, we're really looking to acquire land for Black farmers and activate the land and preserve Black agricultural practices so that Black farmers can create community on the land. Besides just having, you know, active farmland, we also want to make sure that families have access to that land and that Black farmers have opportunities to build generational wealth and equity is practiced. Next slide. So our vision is that Black farmers will be able to tend to the land, be on a parcel of land where they're not having to be constantly displaced, and can build the right relationship with the land, build the soil, their health, and create sovereign communities for generations to come. Next slide. So our pillars, so we have 3 pillars that we want to focus on: land access and preservation. So acquiring secure and affordable land for farmers, land tenures, and families. Specifically, look at environmental conservation practices, such as regenerative ag, and create indigenous land access. And so building right relationship with indigenous communities is really important to us. Farming and food justice is our next pillar. So as we're, you know, acquiring and securing land, we also want to help create that pipeline into agriculture for aspiring farmers that haven't always had the access to be able to access, agricultural education, or, folks that are just have a general interest in farming. We want to get those folks connected to the land. Food production and distribution. And so as we're activating the land and getting more farmers, aspiring farmers engaged and involved, we want to make sure that the food is going right back out into community. It's something that's really important to us, that folks have access to good food. Cultural sovereignty. In order to practice our culture, which we do consider farming a part of our heritage, we want to make sure that community members from the Black community are able to just be on the land, reclaim a right relationship with the land. We are exploring the idea around cultural easements and looking at ways to share governance. Next slide, please. So these are just some of our board members. I know the last time we spoke, I didn't go into too much detail about who we are, but I'm thankful to have a few of our board members on the call today, Anaka and Kiddis. So this is a little bit of a background about who we are, and it's a powerful team of leaders that I'm proud to be a part of. So we have myself, which is co-founder, full-time farmer at My Bone Grown, Jamise Quele, who's a director of food equity at EcoTrust, and also co-founder of Black Food Fund, Anaka, who is our administrative assistant, secretary, artist, herbalist, and filmmaker, filmmaker. Mia, community outreach coordinator, artist or tender. Olivia Ashe, our legal liaison, strategic organizer, and land tender. And Kiddis Ashe, our policy and advocacy director, educator, and birth worker. So we have a very diverse board. Next slide. So our season updates. So, we are a younger organization. And so we are in the process of acquiring capital. And so I'm happy to say that we received $250,000 in grant money so far to put towards programming and capacity building. One of our focuses is also on incubating other Black farms. And so we were able to sustain Mudbone Grown's CSA with over 500 volunteer hours. And that was really amazing, coming out of COVID, that we were able to have volunteers even on the farm. We had our first board retreat for strategic planning, and we are collaborating with OSU on the Leticia Carson project. And we're getting ready to launch our capital campaign so that we can buy our first parcel of land. Next slide. So our capital campaign, we're looking at our goal of $1 million to acquire our first parcel of land that will be held within the trust. On the land, it will support the development of our pods and further our mission of secure land stewardship opportunities for Black farmers and community members. We'll be looking at doing a fundraising donor dinner at the end of February. So we'd love to have you all join us if you're interested. And we have been working really closely with a local realtor that is helping us to look at properties that are going to be a good fit for our needs. Next slide. So I mentioned the Leticia Carson project, where we're really excited about. A few other leaders from Black Food Fund, such as Tiffany and Jamise, were able to join us on the land out in Corvallis. So Leticia Carson was born into slavery in 1814, and she was able to acquire land through the Organ Donation Land Act because she was married to an Irishman, Dave Carson. And so when he died, she was not recognized as his wife. But something really amazing about Leticia Carson, which was was that she was a cattle rancher. And so she came from Kentucky through Missouri, and she was pregnant and breastfeeding one child while also bringing cattle along with her to Oregon. And so really excited to learn more about Leticia Carson and share that with you all. Next slide. So in regards to that project, we're excited that we're going to be meeting in the next week or so to dive into more around Leticia Carson and create a strategic plan with Oregon Black Pioneers, Oregon State University, Black Oregon Land Trust, and the local Corvallis NAACP. And so this is a collaborative project. And so it's going to be something that is very long-term. It's not something that is going to happen overnight, but we are excited to look at preserving the historical knowledge that's been on the land with Leticia Carson being able to tend that, look at education and farming training space, and see where there's going to be opportunities for Black and Indigenous land stewardship. And I can say that the meeting that we had with quite a few deans, and Alan was also a part of that meeting on the land. It was a gorgeous day. And this is where I get into a little bit of storytelling. But when we arrived, we were greeted by an amazing group of elk. And it was just breathtaking. And so we know that we're on the right path, working with this wonderful collaborative with the deans at Oregon State University and many others. And so look forward to updating you all about that. Next slide. So our current pods, we have Mudbone, which is focused on farming and community supported agriculture. We have Womb Home, which is centered in mothering, communal living, child rearing, matriarchal agriculture, and herbalism. And then we have the Sanctuary, which is another urban farm in partnership with Esperanza Spalding that focuses on arts and connecting them to land and space. Next slide. So what are our next steps? Of course, I've already mentioned organizing our fundraising dinner in late February. If you'd like to, if you're interested in supporting that, please let us know. Building a relationship with community partners and investors, and identifying and purchasing our first parcel of land, which we're really excited about with our capital campaign. Next slide. So our current needs are capital funding and potential donors to support land acquisition and technical support with capital campaigns. Like I said, we are a young organization and we're looking and turning to community to be engaged and involved in some of our efforts. It's going to take all of us to be able to save our farmland and activate it and have community members be a part of that process. Next slide. And that's all I have for you all today. Thank you for your time and support, and I will turn it back over.
Thank you, Shantae. Chair Harper, we can take questions. I think there's 4 minutes left in the agenda, so.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks, everyone. Does anyone have questions for our panel on the Oregon Ag Heritage Program?
Chair Harper, I just had a comment I wanted to bring to the board's attention. You have a resolution, it's resolution 315, that talks about working land easements, and the last bullet in the resolution talks about, I'm sorry, I'm just pulling it up, supports the establishment of a fund in state government that could be utilized to help maintain working agricultural lands through the attainment of conservation easements. So just flag that for the board that you do have that resolution, it's active, and really I think the creation of the Ag Heritage Program and a presentation that Nellie did a few years ago, and I think Shantae was also part of that, or sometime in COVID, right? It's either a week or about 10 years. Shantae, I think you were also part of that, really prompted the board to develop that resolution. So just wanted to draw that to your attention.
Brian, Barbara Boyer has a question. Thank you. Nellie, this one's for you. In your presentation, you had mentioned that NRCS needs to see more commitment from the state. Did I hear that correctly?
It's a bit of a chicken or the egg. So NRCS, the state will sort of make their request to the federal office. And I think last year they requested $5 or $6 million, and the federal office only allocated $500,000. And so there were many projects that went unfunded. You know, in some ways we need to show that there are viable projects in the hopper, but for the federal government to see them as viable, they want to see that the project has match in hand or is very likely to get match. So having state match, we hope will attract more federal allocations from that office.
Okay, thank you, Nellie.
No problem.
And I think from my perspective, having worked in other states before coming to Oregon who have very robust state match land easement programs, that plays out. When a state has a strong match program, these land easements and those federal dollars flow very freely, or more freely than what we have seen in Oregon. So having that strong partnership from the state for the federal government as they're figuring out their allocations under the ASAP-AIL program is really important. I saw this very strongly when I worked for a Montana senator. They have had a long-standing program and really maximize those federal dollars.
So just to follow up to that, Barbara Boyer, for the record. So would anything from the board be helpful? A letter of support, or maybe a copy of our resolution with a letter? I don't know what that would look like.
I think that could be helpful. Barbara, I think, you know, we are having conversations both with NRCS and making sure that their pipeline that they send to the federal office is full. But we're also having conversations with the federal delegation. And so I think in those conversations, being able to show the board support and that resolution would be extremely helpful. So if I have the board's permission, I can absolutely bring that into those meetings.
Director Taylor, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the resolutions can absolutely be used. It's a public document, the board's policy position on this, and I encourage that any of the resolutions be used, right? That's part of the reason why the board does them, to lay out where Oregon agriculture is on a certain topic. We use them as a department, but I think broader absolutely should be, feel free to use those, Nellie, in those conversations. I think if, and it's something we could discuss in the board business, if the board wants to do a letter, we can talk to go along with that. We can certainly discuss that. I think the one area we need to make sure we don't step into is the proponents of this have a funding request. Since we don't have an avenue or vehicle as an agency to be supporting that, because we don't have a governor's budget in short session. It's not that we don't support it, but we have to walk that line. And so I think that's why having that board resolution is really important. It's very clear where the Board of Ag is, but that active support in requesting those funding is going to be a line we're going to have to navigate in the short session funding request.
That makes sense. Thank you. But yeah, Nellie, I'd say use our resolution if you know, as a good start.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Well, I'd say we're about there for our public comment section. Thank you again to our panel on Ag Heritage Program update. That was pretty good. It's been a little bit. But either nothing came through the chat, so it looks like there's going to be no public comment. I guess I don't know how everybody feels, if they need a break or if y'all want to just kind of charge on through. I don't know if program area directors are all present. Okay. Well, I guess we'll move into agenda item 5, there is a list that we're for order of speakers. We're going to be hearing from Rusty Rock with food safety, and then Isaac Stapleton with natural resources, and then Jess Paulson with market access and certification, and then Chris Beneman with plant protection conservation. So I guess we'll start with Rusty.
Good morning, everyone. Carla, did you have the slide deck? Perfect, thank you. So I want to give a quick overview of the food safety, animal health, ID, and lab services programs. So there's kind of our organizational structure for the Department of Ag, laying out the various program areas. The food safety program is sorry, one more click. Okay. So the food safety program covers about 40 license types, encompassing retail food, food manufacturing, dairy processing. We have about 12,000 establishments that we inspect on a routine basis, primarily looking at the sanitation aspects of the facilities. Our program staff inspect on a risk-based matrix, so we look at the higher risk facilities to make sure that those risks are being addressed and by the facilities properly, and then we follow a mantra of education before regulation. So we work with our industry to help them understand the whys behind what our regulations are trying to accomplish, and then we'll fall back to enforcement if there's a need to protect public health on an immediate basis. But education really is where we do the yeoman's work of what we're trying to accomplish. Our program over the years has become increasingly complex. A lot of that complexity is being driven by kind of the blurring of the lines between retail food sales and food manufacturing. Manufacturing obviously is a very complex process. Our primary intent in addressing the sanitation aspects of our licensees is really to prevent foodborne illnesses. During the pandemic, we have committed a pretty substantial effort to providing outreach to our industry stakeholders around COVID. That was a little bit outside of our typical area of work, but our goal was really to protect the food chain, to ensure that everybody, everything was intact. Break anywhere in the food chain can be very disruptive to daily life. Within our food program, we have our dairy program, where we work with dairy farmers and dairy processors. That dairy program is pretty tightly tied to our federal counterparts at the FDA. So our goal is preventing outbreaks of disease again, linked to listeria and other pathogens that may be present. We've also been supporting our dairy farmers with innovative projects like robotic milkers, newer technologies related to high temperature, short time pasteurizers, and aseptic processing techniques that are coming out the pipeline and helping to see how that can benefit the state of Oregon. Overall, in the past couple of years, we've been involved with about 21 food recalls that have originated from within Oregon. These range from undeclared allergens to suspected or confirmed pathogen contamination of the food. In those situations, we work with the facilities to quickly get the products removed from the market. We also work with firms that are, through our inspections or through public complaints, we may be notified that there's environmental situations that need to be addressed, such as like a rodent infestation. So we would work with those firms to get them back into compliance and producing safe food again. We also monitor and assess recalls that are coming from out of state. For example, the recent onion recall, we looked at what the chain of how the food moves through. So the onions we found didn't enter into our state, but we wanted to confirm that. So we chased it down to make sure that our public was protected. Additionally, we have a new program we're working on is our state meat inspection program that in 2020, the legislature passed House Bill 4206, and that allowed us to enter into an agreement with the USDA to create an equal to program. Draft rules for that state meat inspection program have been created and sent to the USDA for approval, so we're still waiting to hear back on that one. It's a pretty extensive process. Our intent is not to replace the USDA or push them out of the state. It's really our role is to be available to support the smaller to medium-sized industries that, with some resources that we have within the state, and we're, in my mind, a little bit more accessible to those sizes of industries because that's more what we are tuned to do. USDA's focus generally is on the larger side of industry where there's, but Oregon has a substantial cattle industry. So kind of pivoting off of that, our next program I was going to talk about is our Animal Health and Identification Program. It's where we house our Oregon State veterinarian. And our goal with that program is preventing serious diseases from entering Oregon. Additionally, we work in situations of crisis to identify, quarantine, and eradicate those diseases, but also we support, like during the fires, we had set up assistance for local farmers and even homeowners to house animals that had become unhoused during those emergency events. Within our Animal Health and Identification Program, we have our brands program as well. Livestock are of substantial investment for farmers. We have about 11,000 brands that we monitor throughout the state. And in August and September, we inspected each month approximately 100,000 animals to ensure that the transactions were legitimate and that there wasn't any theft going on. As much as cattle theft might seem like a thing of the past, it's a current and ongoing thing, and we work hard to make sure that everything that all the commerce that occurs is legitimate. And last but not least, within this program is our lab services program. They provide consumer protection and encourage economic growth in Oregon by providing internationally and nationally accredited testing services. Our program lab is accredited by ISO, which is a system of ensuring that the testing processes are consistent and equivalent to what they, national standards. Our testing programs are also recognized as a foreign laboratory by Japan's Ministry of Health and Labor, Korean's Ministry of Food, Drug, and Safety, and Taiwan's Bureau of Standards. The labs support our food safety program, obviously, which supports our dairy producers, shellfish and crab, but we also support our pesticides program, fertilizer, compliant animal feed operations, and water quality programs. We're also a member of the Food Emergency Response Network, which is a nationwide program of disseminating information in emergencies. So I think that covers everything, and I can pass the baton to Isaac, I believe.
Thanks, Rusty. Yeah, good morning, Chair Harper and members of the board. I'm Isaac Stapleton, the new Natural Resources Program Area Director. 3 days into the job, so bear with me. But I did start with ODA, as Lauren mentioned, in our pesticides program area. So it's not entirely new, and it is nice to kind of be back almost home where I started with the agency. So I'll give you a brief overview of the program area as best I can at this point. The program area is comprised of three main elements: water quality, agricultural production, and resource management. We have two water quality focused programs, one that focuses on non-point source pollution, which is our ag water quality program, and one that focuses on point sources, which is the confined animal feeding operation program. The programs take a somewhat different approach in the way that their regulations are structured, but they share the same goal of water quality protection and a philosophy of progressive approach to compliance. The water quality program supports farmers and ranchers to achieve Oregon's water quality standards through compliance activities and through partnerships with other agencies and organizations such as soil water conservation districts. As part of the water quality program, there are local area committees that meet periodically to review the progress of an area's plan in the 38 watershed-based management areas across Oregon. Each area has a set of rules that are outcome-based. The rules must be met, but there's flexibility in how that compliance is achieved. That's to recognize the diversity in Oregon's landscape and agriculture. On the other side, ODA in participation with DEQ operate Oregon's confined animal feeding operation program. The CAFO program works with works with animal operators in the state to ensure that manure management practices are protective of ground and surface waters. Operators must comply with specific prescriptive conditions as well as federal and state laws to protect water quality. So where the water quality program is more flexible in the approach, the CAFO program is much more prescriptive in how the operators have to comply with those water quality standards. And just as a overview of what CAFOs include, there are small goat and sheep dairies, cow dairies, beef feedlots, egg layer and broiler operations, dog kennels, and even wildlife safari. There's one, I think, that we permit. So moving on, under the agriculture and consumer products section, ODA regulates, enforces, and educates users on pesticides, which is where I started. We also register and ensure truth in labeling for fertilizer and other soil amendment products. The pesticides include a wide range of products, some that people don't always think of, such as household disinfectants like Clorox wipes, which by now we're all familiar with due to the pandemic. There's flea and tick medications for your pets, and then the products that most people think of around conventional or organic weed and insect products for home or agricultural production. The program focuses on educating and training as a first step to safe and responsible use of pesticides. However, when appropriate, the enforcement team steps in to enforce the state's pesticide laws where a potential misapplication is made. One thing that the program likes to say a lot is the label is the law. Each container label is an enforceable federal law, and that's no matter the product, whether you're talking about that household cleaner or the insecticide being applied to a field, what is on that label must be followed. And that's what our program enforces too. Under the natural resource protection portion, Oregon soil and water conservation districts help farmers and ranchers and in many cases our urban and rural residents manage their natural resources on the land to meet conservation goals. We have 45 soil and water conservation districts in our state. The Soil and Water Conservation District program at ODA administers the elections process for Oregon's SWCDs and provides training to the elected boards of directors and staff, and also takes questions on diverse topics, including compliance with Oregon's public meeting law and good financial controls. The successful soil and water conservation districts are important because as I mentioned earlier, they are the local partners to help implement agricultural water quality plans. They help landowners identify workable strategies to fix problems, provide project designs, and even help obtain financial assistance. Our SWCD program helps SWCD stay legal and successful and helps maintain that important partnership between SWCDs and ODA to accomplish Oregon's water quality goals. And with that, I will pass it off to Jess Paulson. Thank you.
Yes, good morning. So for the record, Jess Paulson, Director of the Market Access and Certification Programs. The MAC program is a little bit different from those of the others in ODA in that our role really is not as a regulator, but is as a grouping of programs and services that encourages the growth and success of Oregon agriculture through marketing, access to grant funding and other opportunities, and services like inspection and provision of services like certification. So the first one on the list there is our market access program, and that has been something that we have in the past largely focused on international and export supports. We have a participation with the 13 Western states in an organization called WUSADA. Through this program, we can access USDA funding in order to lead Oregon and other producers from around the 13 states to foreign markets, which are generally those in Asia. We've had a very strong presence in markets like Japan and South Korea. Over time, we're revising how we do that international outreach with more and more of a focus on North America. That's to reflect the proximity that we have to Canada and Mexico and how familiar those markets are to our exporters. But it also means a focus on emerging markets such as Vietnam, or markets where we have a better position for the types of products that we produce in Oregon and where the climate is better for higher incomes such as Taiwan and Singapore. That work that we do overseas, however, has kind of neglected over a long period of time. I think the need in Oregon to bring up smaller companies that are looking for more opportunities in local markets. And so we are refocusing our energies towards efforts that will take from the very ground level people who are beginning to do their work and serve as a kind of concierge to the other services within ODA, whether it's food safety or even other parts of MAC, to ensure that people are able to navigate what is often a very complicated world of regulations and funding and really the large number of organizations within Oregon that are already available to provide services to help people be successful as well. To that end, we are redirecting one of our trade managers who covers North America, Canada, and Mexico, but to really work on that regional work, to work on local, regional, and then national distribution and promotions. Part of that, Rusty already mentioned the MEAT initiative, and our team is engaged on kind of the pairing with the work of setting up a state meat inspection. So we have two work groups that are partnering with that to look at the needs on the production side and what resources we can bring to support that. Part of that is a grant that the state has made available, which is $2 million, and is rules are coming out actually today, and we'll have that grant in process in really February and March, which we found to be a better time for the participants to be able to focus on putting together the most viable and successful grant applications that they can. Other grants that we're working on in kind of the local development world are focusing on the large amount of money that's coming out from the federal government right now in all areas, including seafood, the meat initiative, infrastructure that's necessary to address some of the challenges that we have with transportation, for example. There's a large amount of need across the very diverse state that we have, and so our team is trying to find where we can be engaged and help steer some of those resources to address the many challenges that we have. We have 2 other programs within our marketing area that is not unique, but one is very strong in the state. We have the first farm to school program that until recently was the best funded one in the country. We are still a leader and have a pilot program for the type of assistance that we lead for farmers that want to sell directly into schools through a local reimbursement program to compensate for the high cost of high quality products that we want to make sure that our students have access to. We have a grant program that we just did in the last biennium that will be continuing in the next, and that announcement will be coming out soon, that tries to provide additional resources for farmers that have to overcome some hurdles in order to meet the standards and the requirements of the school procurement programs. And then also within our program area, we have the Commodity Commission oversight, and we have 22, 23, becoming 24 programs with the inclusion of hemp in this next year as our newest Commodity Commission. So working with all of these organizations to within house, so to say, address the needs that they have, whether it's with breeding or the improvement of other tools and resources they need for their industries to be more successful. The kind of large part of the market access certification program areas is the certification and inspection programs. Those are largely our commodity inspection is a third-party service that is between the handlers and the producers to make sure that there's confidence in the market, to make sure that our products are paid what they are due based on the quality, and to keep the industry as healthy as we can. And that's a seasonal and intense work that we have had to really juggle, and a lot of kudos to my assistant director, Casey Prentice, who really works day and night with the members of the industry, with our staff, to overcome labor shortages and intense time demands for crops that have a very short period of time when you're going from harvest to handling. We have the certification programs that we run are for-fee services. These are generally the good agricultural and good handling practices that are among numerous different standards that are required by procurement of retailers or food service. And we want to make sure that the growers that we have in the state are able to access each of those standards, implement them, and make sure that their product is able to access each of those market channels. One of the programs we have to support that is the organic cost share program. We want to make sure that anyone who is producing in an organic fashion is able to take advantage of the certification requirements for access to labeling your product as organic. We have an office that provides training for produce safety, and this is the portion that the state does for the Food Safety Modernization Act, which has been underway for over a decade now by the Food and Drug Administration. We do training programs so that farmers, large and small, understand what the requirements under this new food safety system is. And we do audits to help them prepare for what compliance looks like when they have an audit come in from FDA. We, in the last year or two, have looked at the resolution from the Board of Agriculture and what ODA's role should be in the rollout of FSMA. There's the training portion, and then there's the actual audit on behalf of FDA's portion, work. And currently we have FDA doing the enforcement of FSMA. And then the last of our programs that I want to mention is our seed program, in that our grass seed industry is so large and important in Oregon. We have a whole slew of services that we provide through this program that ensures that the labeling on our products are credible, and that we have the best reputation for Oregon seed that is in line with the quality of the product that we have, and that when people are buying it, they know what they're getting. And in the last year, we've added to the MAC program area weights and measures, which is yet another service that maybe you don't anticipate being in the Department of Agriculture, but whenever you go into a retail outlet that is weighing a product like a grocery store, when you go to the gas pump, and even for the movement of cattle when we're weighing animals, all of those devices are inspected and overseen by ODA, weights and measures staff. So we have just 18 field inspectors to take a look at 55,000 commercial weighing devices across the state. And our goal is to make sure that we get to each of these to make sure that when you go to the grocery store, you don't call into question when they weigh a pound of whatever product you're having. You know that the weight that it's coming up with is going to be accurate. Part of the more recent development in that, our team is very involved in the national standard setting bodies, but we also need to make sure that we are conveying the information to the public. So currently we're working on a new rule that will communicate changes that the state just adopted in the last year for changes of the blend of ethanol in gasoline, and what that language will have to look like at every pump, so that consumers will know when they drive up to get gas what is actually in that gasoline. And I think, to wrap it up, it's that confidence that ODA provides for the industry because of the integrity we have in our programs carries forward to cover all the products that we have. So whether it's sold in a local store at a gas station here in Oregon, or if it's a product that's purchased overseas or anywhere around the country, people know that when it's coming from Oregon, it's going to be a high quality product, it's safe, and it's something that they want to purchase. So I'm happy to answer questions at the end, but I'll pass that on to the next speaker.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Chris Benham. I'm the interim director of our Plant Protection Conservation Program area. And much like Isaac Stapleton, I'm also relatively new in this position, taking on the role as of last Wednesday, I believe. So bear with me as I plug through this. So kind of going over our program area briefly, it's composed of 5 rather diverse programs, but I think really what the unifying tie here is with the goal of protection and conservation, in generally speaking, towards preserving our natural and agricultural resources within Oregon. Kind of the two programs, one of which I'm currently the manager of, is our Nursery Christmas Tree program and our hemp program. Both the connecting tie there is that they are license fee programs, which kind of make up the inspection and enforcement arm. So that is kind of the distinguishing feature of these 2 programs in relation to our other programs, such as our integrated pest management program, abbreviated here as pest prevention, our noxious weed program, as well as our plant conservation program. So our Nursery and Christmas Tree program, really the goal here is to protect Oregon's $1 billion nursery industry. So just to keep in mind, that is the top commodity in Oregon, and has been for several years in a row. And so we're doing that through inspection and certification of nursery stock of both incoming and outgoing plant material. And just to touch on a bit of what Deputy Director Henderson pointed out about the value of new programs. We've got a new program staff. We've definitely been incorporating new staff as we've seen a number of retirements in the program, which have affected our program operations. But currently today, actually, we have a new assistant program lead. So it'll be a great benefit to myself, who'll be coming on board and not coming from the state service. So she's coming in with fresh ideas, fresh perspective, definitely coming with a scientific background that I hope to be able to utilize. So just to kind of touch on that we are looking for new ways to kind of benefit and bolster the program. Our program staff works heavily collaboratively with multiple surveys with both our plant health program and our entomology group. And this is really critical for maintaining our pest-free status. And the reason that that is important is so that we can vet that we are free of regulatory pests of concern, which increases our marketability of our nursery stock for both domestic and international phytosanitary requirements, so to make sure that we're meeting those specs. In particular, I want to point out that our nursery staff has worked collaboratively with their entomology group on a variety of pest issues over the past several months, including box tree moth, southern fire ant, Japanese beetle, gypsy moth, just to name a few. And so we're really assisting with both trapping efforts and response actions. And we really heavily rely on good communication to execute rapid response to prevent the establishment of unwanted pests. And likewise, we also look for ways to bolster research efforts that benefit the nursery industry directly. So we maintain our nursery research grant, and that grant money comes from the license fees from our licensed growers, which I'd say to date, we have about 2,800 licensed nurseries and roughly about just over 340 licensed Christmas tree growers. So we've been able to award roughly about $167,000 for grants that will be awarded to recipients in the 2022 cycle, which is going to about 6 researchers. And our Christmas tree industry, despite the heat dome, shipping has been able to go onward. We've seen an uptick in the amount of containers that have been sent to Hawaii, with Hawaii and Mexico still being our 2 of our biggest importers of Oregon Christmas trees. Our industrial hemp program, or our hemp program, assists with industry in growing and producing hemp plants, which helps with hemp commodities and products to maintain and be produced within state and federal guidelines. And also this, and by extension, is helping protect the health and safety of consumers. The program has a fairly large enforcement arm or enforcement function to oversee and tackle the issue of illegal hemp grows, and a lot of that activity has been happening in Southern Oregon, and that's been dubbed Operation Table Rock. And those activities have been going onward and have pretty much wrapped up by the end of September. And to date, there are reported about 293 cases where of those 42 were found to be presumptive marijuana. So keeping in mind that that basically means of those sites that had samples that were tested, roughly 50% of those were tested as hot, meaning that they were found to have detectable levels of THC, which is 5% or higher. And staff are currently working on following up on those enforcement actions, which include destruction orders of those preemptive marijuana grows. And by given the authority of House Bill 3000, we now have, ODA will now have the authority to require background checks for these for the hemp producers. So we're still awaiting approval from the FBI to continue to conduct the required criminal background checks, which means until those background checks can be completed, all of our grower license will be reviewed, but they won't be fully in effect. So they're effectively be on hold for the time being. Jumping into our insect pest prevention program, or we dub as IPPM, this really serves the goal of identifying and eradicating exotic and invasive insect species in particular. So a big Japanese beetle has once again come on the scene with recent detections both in Washington State and in California. And in Oregon, within the Portland metro area, we've had an ongoing long-term eradication program that's been highly effective at keeping Japanese beetle at bay in Oregon. And so both of those states, Washington and California, have reached out to our program specialists to seek out our expertise. And that has budded into some cross-training opportunities with both of the State Department of Ags in both of those states, targeting on information about eradication, targeting outreach, communication, and all of that resource sharing, so that both of those states are now able to utilize those materials to implement their own eradication program. So again, that's kind of showing all the expertise and knowledge that our program has been able to develop over the years directly through experience. They also have, through inspections and much like collaborative efforts and outreach, they've been able to prevent the introduction of, I think they said, about 10 pests from establishing in Oregon this year alone, which includes light brown apple moth, gypsy moth, southern fire ant, again, which is not only harmful to humans, but also has harmful aspects to agriculture and the nursery industry. And an odd one that came up, which was New Guinea flatworm, which is a carrier of rat lungworm disease. So I just point that out to say that invasives aren't always necessarily just about protecting our natural resources, but they can also be a benefit of protecting issues for human health and safety. And probably many of you heard about the Asian giant horn issue that's been going on up in Washington. So as a preventative measure, our staff has been doing some cross training with the Washington Department of Ag, and again, to have plans in place for if, probably when, we start maybe see Asian giant horn here in Oregon. In addition, we also have our noxious weed program, which serves to function as protecting Oregon's ecosystems from introduction to spread of noxious weeds. And as previously mentioned, our weed staff has been or already is transitioning back into full-time weed work. Previously, they were, due to the lack of lottery funds, they had to be put on hemp duty. So now that they are back to fully bolster their program operations. And so with that, they're continuing to work on release of important biocontrol agents, which are effective against Japanese knotweed and gorse. And also they wanted to mention that the Oregon State Weed Board currently has 2 grant cycles open for proposals, with those closing later this month on the 15th. And lastly but not least is our plant conservation program, which has seen an expansion in funds, which means that the program can now get back to what its authoritative goal is, which is to develop, review the threatened endangered species plant list that is maintained in Oregon. So that is being at the top priority for the program's objectives for 2022. Also to kind of bolster the recognition of the program and increase awareness and communications with stakeholders that are interested in issues revolving around threatened endangered species. They're working to develop a rare plant stakeholder group in order to further discussions related to plant conservation needs and really identifying how ODA can assist to meet those needs. And that would conclude that. So I'm happy to take questions later. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Rusty, Isaac, Jess, and Chris. Does anybody have any questions for our program area directors or comments?
Yeah, this is Elin. I had a question. And this may be more in the market access arena, but the interaction between commodity commissions and the Oregon Department of Ag as it relates to some of the market access and just how that relationship, is it different for different commodities? Is it the same? Just some understanding of that.
Well, I think a great, sorry, Jess Paulson for the record. I think a great example of that would be our work with the Blueberry Commission. Not all of our commodities are as export oriented, but for example, we've gained in 2019 market access for our fresh blueberries to Vietnam. And that was in large part due to the work of the Oregon Blueberry Commission. We also work with the Washington Blueberry Commission and with the national cooperator body. But our commission executive and our commissioners were very involved in the collection of information, the work with USDA, and then the team that we have here with our ADMP worked very closely between them to coordinate the provision of that information. The completion of a pest risk assessment, for example, which is a multi-year process and quite technical. So I think that probably highlights that element of cooperation between the industry members, ODA, and how ODA interfaces with the foreign and federal partners to get that done. On the same part, we also work with them quite closely when it comes to promotion activities. So we have another trade manager working with, say, the Oregon Dairy Nutrition Council to consolidate shipments of dairy products from the Western United States, including our cheeses, our butter and yogurts and ice creams to go to new markets like Singapore and other markets within Southeast Asia.
So Elin, just taking a step back from some of those great examples that Jess mentioned of how we intersect, I appoint as director the members of the commodity commissions. And then we have a staff person who helps on oversight. And so, making sure they're following, appropriate public meeting rules and ensuring that they're staying, answering questions around acceptable activities so they can do education, marketing, promotion, and research activities. I think every commodity commission is structured a little different based upon industry priorities. I think the hemp commission, which is new, and we're recruiting for applications now for kind of the interim commission to get set up and set up some of the rules associated on how they're going to operate. They'll likely do a lot of focus on research because a lot of research needs to be done, and we'll likely work with OSU's College of Hemp Excellence. And so that's going to be probably a big focus for them. Some are maybe more mature industries, more mature markets, and do a lot of marketing activity. One of the things we saw through the heat dome was the Raspberry Blackberry Commission did a lot of work collecting information from the impact of the heat dome from their growers and compiling that and providing that as educational information to us as an agency, to the governor's office, to our federal delegation, which I think really helped then in turn to craft some of those changes, have our federal delegation take that to craft some of the changes in that $10 billion program to make sure it works for our growers. So they kind of function differently based upon, I think, industry needs.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Thanks.
So Barbara Boyer has a question. This is for plant protection and conservation program. I'm sorry, I did not retain your name, Chris. Thank you. There you are.
I apologize. Also, I had my camera off and I didn't even realize, so I wasn't trying to hide. Thank you. Sorry.
So you had mentioned that 50% of the tests came back as 5% or more. Is that correct?
I did, but just to specify on that, I perhaps might have muddled through that pretty quickly. It wasn't 50% of all, it was 50% of those cases. So there was a total, I think I said 293 cases that they went through, and of those 43 were found presumptive marijuana. And then I was just trying to explain what that testing metric is to say that means 50% of those tested samples would have tested at 5% THC or higher.
But wasn't the threshold 3% at one time?
So I can help you here, Chris. So the definition of hemp is 0.3% or higher. However, with the scope of some of the challenges, I think, around illegal cannabis activities in the state, anything that is not registered hemp and not registered recreational marijuana is illegal cannabis. But law enforcement, they don't care if, right now with some of the level of or the number of some of the illegal operations we have in the state and the level of cannabis, their concern wasn't 1% THC. So we set a threshold of 5% THC to help narrow the scope as we worked under Operation Table Rock with our law enforcement partners. I think on the testing question is also important to know, one operation, there's multiple tests that we pull from that one operation. We don't just pull one test. So to help give context, we could pull on this initial kind of presumptive positives up to 3 tests. When we take regulatory action, then we can pull up to, I don't know if I still see Sunny on. I don't believe she is, and I don't think Lauren's back yet. We can pull up to, I think, 15, 20, 30 tests. But those presumptive will be up to 3 tests. So just to give context that it's not just necessarily 1 test per farming operation.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for program area directors?
Just a big thank you to all you program directors. It's quite a lift that you all do. So thank you very much.
So one of the things, I appreciate you saying that, Barbara. Yeah, I think we wanted to kind of set us up as we go into budget development, again, to help remind the board just the breadth and depth of everything we do as an agency as we go kind of next meeting on bringing about our concepts around the next biennium, whether they be legislative concepts or just additional budget asks. So that's kind of why we structured today's board meeting like this. Also, you know, we have some newer board members and just making sure we kind of have all that level set. One of the other things I kind of forgot that we should have maybe done, but that I can just briefly do, is we didn't really talk about the director's office. Obviously, for the agency, a lot of the all of the administrative functions sit there: HR, IT, financial services, accounts payable, lights, but also a lot of times programs that might not have a great fit anywhere else are housed in at the director's office, or maybe a program that gets started and we get the kind of foundation and then we move it into a program area. So today, you know, the wolf depredation grant program, which are grants to counties that have county wolf programs, that's based in the director's office. I'm trying to think of some others, but that's the one that comes to mind. So there's some of those. Oh, the bovine manure tax credit. Obviously, Sunny Summers, from a hemp policy perspective, is based in the director's office. So some of those are based there. And then our communication shop as well, so for the agency. So just wanted to kind of highlight that component as well.
This is Josh. I just wanted to second Barbara's thank you for all your different departments' work. I know, like, we're busy people and we probably aren't really, you know, vocal about it, but we really appreciate the work that all of you guys are doing, especially the nursery people for me anyway. But I know it's probably equally important, you know, in every sector. So thank you, and good luck to all the new people.
Zealand, one more thing. Could that slide deck be made available to the board? Because I think it was just really nice and concise, and there was obviously a lot more said, a lot more detail, but that would be great. If
Absolutely.
it was, I didn't think I saw it on the, okay, great.
Yep, sorry, Elin, to cut you off. Yes, we will send that out as follow-up, and we will also post it under board materials, so all the public can access that as well if they have follow-up. Yep.
All right, I guess on that note, we can move to our board business. And I guess first up is Barbara Boyer with an OWEB report.
All right, so I'll give you a quick update. We had our virtual meeting on October 26th, 27th, and it was approving of, excuse me, it was approving or awarding a lot of grants. It was 2 full days virtually. Very tiring, but we did it. And we approved open solicitation grants. We approved land acquisition grants, which was quite a lift, but we did it. I'm trying to figure out, I'm looking at our agenda just to give you some highlights. And we get presentations on each of the grants that are recommended for funding. So that takes a big chunk of the meeting. We actually are doing our biannual report, which the Board of Ag has to do also. It's mandated by the legislature, so we're working on that. And I was on the panel, the hiring panel. We hired a contractor to do some DEI work at the board and staff level at OWEB. So we're beginning that process. It'll be a year-long process next year. So we're trying to figure out, as the co-chair of OWEB, I do sit on that, the organizational part of this, what the training looks like. So we also are having a very robust conversation on using the climate lens in our application process. But there's a delicate balance there, as we feel if we make it too prescriptive, we may be alienating the very clientele we're trying to engage. So it's a really delicate balance, and it's, you know, it's due to capacity for some of these smaller organizations if we put too much restrictions. So it's a robust conversation. We have not come to any conclusion, but we are asking some of the grantees some questions now so we can monitor where we move forward with this particular topic. And that is all I have for my OWEB report. Well, of course, actually, sorry, I gotta say, you know, I'm welcoming Lisa and Stephanie, who I've worked with both of them for years. So it's gonna be, it'll be fun to see them transition into this this new position. And I work so well with both of them. So I'm looking forward to having them in this new role at OWEB. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Any questions or comments for Barbara? All right, well, next on the board business list here is determining the work groups for the resolutions that are under review in 2022. Carla sent an email listing, there's work group A and then work group B. So I don't know if any of you had time to look and see which ones you preferred to work with. I think no more than 5 per work group.
And I think one of the things just to remind board members is with going our plan today to go to in-person or a hybrid meeting for the first of next year. We typically will do Tuesday night. We'll get together as work groups and do the initial conversation on those resolutions and then plan out what type of work needs to kind of happen over the course of the rest of the year.
So are you looking for us now, or do you want us to email Carla? What I'm trying to figure out what you're looking for today.
It's a great question. I was kind of having the same thought process there. I'm trying to remember how we did this before. I couldn't remember if we'd emailed or if we just picked in the meeting.
If you have, you know, a work group that you would prefer to work on and know that now, I'm certainly willing to take that information, or if you'd like to think about it and review it a little bit more and send me an email with your preference, then I can finalize that and send it out to know, so you know which work group that you'll be working on. But if you have a preference now, you certainly are welcome to share it.
Chad?
Chair Harper?
Sir.
Yeah, this is Chad Allen here. I'd like to be in group work A, please.
Barbara Boyer, I'd love to be in work group B, please.
Yeah.
Josh. Sorry, go ahead, Ian.
Elin
No.
Miller, I just put it in the chat. A would be, sorry.
We can raise hands here. Luisa, I would like to work in group A. If you can put me there. Thank you.
Chair Harper would actually like A as well, if there's still any space there.
Had you gotten mine earlier? I put it in the chat for A.
Yep, there it is. Thank you, Elin.
Shantae Johnson, I'd be happy to join B since everyone's going to A.
Reminder, we'll also have 2 new board members that will need to add to the work groups as well.
This is Josh, work group B, please.
Great,
So I
thanks
think
everyone.
that leaves Randy, and then our 2 new members that we can perhaps put one on each of the committees. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, well, we've already heard from Jim, so I guess we'll move on to newsletter topics.
Before we do that, Chair Harper, could I just mention to make sure I put this on the record as obviously there will be, I think, multiple opportunities next year for the public to comment on the various resolutions with their perspectives. And that first, I think that first board meeting is the first opportunity. We will have a public comment period and encourage our various stakeholders and the public to comment on any of those resolutions up for consideration as the board is considering keeping them active, retiring them, or keeping them active with edits as they work through the work group process.
Sounds pretty good. All right, so newsletter topics. Any thoughts after what we heard today?
Since hemp is continuing to get a lot of press, I would say things about what the department is doing and the leadership on the hemp opportunities and challenges. So.
Barbara Boyer here. Just to Director Taylor's comment about having those program area updates today and the importance with legislative session, I wonder somehow we could just highlight the vast areas that the department touches on in the state of Oregon. And then, of course, the OAHP, we got to have that in there because we want funding for it. At least some of us do. But
I think on OAHP, that's a great opportunity since the primary audience of the newsletter is the legislature. We can make mention of the ask that is coming through short session. We can highlight the board resolution supporting funding for that. And so I think there's a way to to bring all of that in an appropriate way for us as a board and as an agency and still highlight some of that work that's happened. And that's going to be before them in February.
Should we mention anything about the staffing changes? It's been a while since we've had that big of a change. And yeah, we're all pretty excited about it. So it seems worth noting.
Yeah, thank you for that suggestion, Chair Harper. We will highlight some of our new folks, in particular Lauren and Isaac. And at that point, when we get the newsletter out, we may even have some additional new staff in those senior levels as we're currently recruiting for food safety and for plant and conservation. So yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Excellent. Any other ideas or thoughts for our upcoming newsletter? All righty. I guess we'll move on to the 2022 meeting dates and locations. So I guess, yeah, we had that doodle poll. Carla, I guess I didn't see any particular dates. Maybe I missed it. But
in your materials, there was a memo that laid out what seemed to be the most agreed upon dates that were available by each quarter. So if everybody has that information, or I can share what those were as a result of the doodle poll, but not everyone, I think, had a chance to complete the doodle poll. So we want to start from those two proposed dates per quarter and see if we can't settle our meeting dates for 2022 along with locations. I think we talked earlier that the next quarter we typically have in the Salem area, so that one is the location is pretty much established. So if we just want to go quarter by quarter, for the first quarter, January through March of next year, the most available dates were February 1 through 3 or March 1 through 3. So if we want to just have a conversation around those and which ones might work best for everybody, we'll just go kind of quarter by quarter.
One thing on that first quarter I would just highlight is short session will be in that February timeframe. Short session will be over in March. And so usually we do, if we do it in that short session timeframe, you know, we always bring in various stakeholders and do a legislative panel, which it probably won't be necessary in the same context in that March date. So just something to think about.
Well, just for me being there physically, this is Elin, sorry. For me being there physically, March 1st through 3rd would be great, but I'll have to do virtual in February. But
this is Josh. The February date works way better for me. And I think going ahead of the session would have some benefits.
Chad, did you have something?
Yeah, I guess I overlooked today, but the first of the month is a tough one for me on any month because of payroll that I got to take care of. That's the only. Every once in a while I can figure something out. But
And the first date, I'll just remind you, the first date of those of the date string is that Tuesday, and so we would start the meeting the evening of that first date. So it would be the evening of February 1st or the evening of March 1st.
okay, well that's a good clarification, and then that is a little more doable.
And then the second day is typically the full day meeting, and historically we've done a half day on the third day. So that's why we have that 3-day string of dates. Is typically what we've historically done with our meeting dates.
Okay, well then any of them would be fine for me. Then that solves my issue.
Barbara Boyer here. Carla, both those dates in the first quarter suggestions work for me.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe we'll select February 1 to 3, and it will be in the Salem area or hybrid. Let's move on to the second quarter then, April through June. We had a May 3 through 5 or a June 14 through 16. Any preferences there?
June 14 through 16 is better for me. Sorry, this is Elin.
May actually would be better for me because June is going to be really packed. This is Shantae Johnson. CSA stuff for me.
I think May works for me better too. But I can be flexible, but no, May is good. May will work better actually.
Any other preferences for that quarter?
June works better for me, but I can be flexible.
They both work for me, Carla. Barbara Boyer.
Yeah, and both work for Chair Harper.
And I think both worked for Randy as well. Any thoughts on location? I think we were maybe talking about going back to the Corvallis area that we had previously talked about doing in September, but didn't get there. It had been a while since we had been in that area of the state. So any other suggestions on locations for that quarter? Or confirmation that Corvallis would work?
Carla, just some clarity, please. Which date did we pick for the second quarter?
We hadn't really finalized
okay.
that. So we,
Okay.
It looked like most people preferred May, but some could be flexible. So maybe we'll go with the May 3 through 5.
Thank you. And I like the Corvallis idea. It's been a long time since we've been there.
Okay.
You're always welcome in Corvallis.
And then the third quarter, July through September, the most available dates were in August, August 16 through 18 or August 23 to 25. We have been talking for a couple of years of getting out to the eastern part of the state. I think our goal was to get to Ontario. So I don't know, if the 2 weeks difference, makes a difference in maybe visiting our onion industry and some of the other things that we want to take advantage of out there. So again, just open for discussion on which dates might work better.
The earlier date works better for me. I think the second one might overlap with the nursery main trade show.
Yeah, Chair Harper here. I like the earlier dates as well.
Any other preferences?
Zealand, I can do both.
Barbara Boyer can do both.
Yeah, me too. Any of those work for me.
Shante, what would you prefer?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't have a preference. I'm gonna be raggedy in August anyways.
I think one of the things with it sounds like the earlier date in August. I'm not sure if that is a good time actually to go to Ontario. So why don't we just park it as a maybe Eastern Oregon board meeting, and we'll connect with Randy and Casey Prentice on our team. And if it's not a good time, we'll find a different maybe spot in Eastern Oregon to bring the board. And then in 2023, we'll try to have the meeting in September when they're in harvest and be in Ontario at that time, if that is amenable to the board.
So do we have a preference then on those earlier dates of August 16 through 18? And then the fourth quarter, October through December, we had a mid-November date of 15 through 17 or early December 6 through 8.
Early December works best for me during that time of year.
I can't do early December. It's direct conflict with my Fall Creek board meeting.
I would also prefer mid-November.
Yeah, Chair Harper is also going to be mid-November as well.
Barbara Boyer's fine with both. I just wouldn't be able to make the 17th of November, but I can do the 15th, 16th.
Shante Johnson here. Are we going to be traveling anywhere during that time?
Again, we've usually held that meeting, in the valley in the, between Portland and Salem area. So it would be on this side of the state.
Oh, okay. Then I think that'd be fine, yeah.
Typically.
Either
Whatever
way.
you-
And this is
Just as a
Elan
reminder-
Denim and Diamonds is that Friday too.
The 17th or the 18th.
I was just going to remind folks that we will be doing a hybrid. So if folks can't travel for some reason, weather or just scheduling conflicts for the full board, we will have options to still participate.
Anybody want to finalize what date we have for that last quarter? Seems like it was kind of split with preferences.
I know that for Chair Harper, the Oregon Farm Bureau annual meeting is usually right around that time. And this year it's 7th through the 9th or something like that, 8th, 9th. So that it just could be a conflict. I mean, not that I have to be there, but usually I go represent Lane County on the House of Delegates. So yeah, that's kind of why I was leaning more towards mid-November.
Okay, is everybody good with the November 15 through 17?
Yes, that would work for me too.
And any preference on location? Anywhere from Portland to Salem, okay with folks?
Yeah, we've done Portland in December, and that's always been well received.
Okay, we'll check out some locations in the Portland, Wilsonville, maybe area, Salem, somewhere in between those locations, and work towards that. Great, this will be very helpful. We'll get things organized and on the books so we can start planning our 2022 dates and hopefully meeting in person and a hybrid location as well. So looking forward to it.
Long time coming. All right, is there anything else? That was the last agenda item on board business. If anybody had any other comments or any ideas? Well, it doesn't sound like it. Well, I guess that's meeting adjourned right there. Excellent.
Thank you, Brian.
Hey, you're welcome.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Good job.
Thanks.
Thanks.
You did good.